start? Well, as Pan said in her invitation, this promises to be a very interesting evening. The discussion is highly, highly relevant for us in our world today. You may not be as plagued with terrorism as we are, but it's a scourge worldwide. And actually, it contains a lot of logotherapy lessons for us because logotherapy essentially is that we should find meaning from the traumatic effects of fear and trauma and terror by finding meaning and finding that courage of faith really to overcome those traumas in a triumphant way. We know that logotherapy, even though it was developed before Frankel entered the Nazi death and concentration camps, that its validity and its power was tested right there. And that is why, as Gordon Allport, the great humanist philosopher and psychologist, remarked about Frankel, for someone that have suffered that much and was able to survive it in the way he did, he has a voice that is to be listened to. So Sean is really our research fundi, one who analyzes everything in terms of an in-depth research point of view. And Sean, we're looking forward to an article that you really wrote on terrorism, psychological warfare, and the stress dynamics micro guide for resilience that you developed as a result of it. So we are very interested to hear your work. Thank you, Sean. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Taria. This is actually an ongoing subject. If you remember, about a year ago, I did a lot of research based on the inhumane mind, which was controversial. However, I continue to follow, trying to understand the effects of terror, of fear. So we often talk about fear as a narrative of false evidence appearing real. Unfortunately, this is real. So, in terms of when it comes to fear, terrorism's greatest weapon is not its rockets, bombs, or infiltration squads. Its greatest weapon is fear. And I think that if we understand that that is what they are trying to do, and it is in their manifestos, I have unpacked a number of the manifestos in terms of terrorist groups, and their manifestos are certainly that. Those of you who are South Africans, if you go back to the war fighting against apartheid, you will also find that the same guerrilla tactics or psychological warfare still applies today. In fact, it's become enhanced. And why is it become enhanced? Because of social media, because of technology, they're able to get into our heads. And it is called the battlefield in the mind. Is that they overtake us in terms of trying to put that fear into us. Fear magnified, broadcast, and sustained until the very fabric of daily life feels fragile, uncertain, and unsafe. Today, I want to take you inside the mechanisms of the terror psychological warfare. We will examine how fear is manufactured, how it's sustained through modern information channels, how it erodes our resilience over time, and most importantly, how science-based strategies can interrupt its grip. Our focus is not on politics or ideology, but on human neurobiology and stress dynamics. We'll look at the mental, emotional, physiological, and even spiritual dimensions of recovery, because terrorism acts all of them. And I was very fortunate in research. We don't often find, and we always continue to look for laboratories of the living laboratory. And I have been fortunate over the last 2 years to understand more about what terrorism and warfare and psychological warfare can do to the mind. And I'm going to share with you the fact that my son lives in Jerusalem, and he's now here on holiday. And he's a chiropractor in Jerusalem. And I just want to share a few things that I learned from him, in that he has treated many soldiers. He has treated, obviously, civilians. And it's interesting from the 8th of October how things have progressed in terms of where we are right now. People are burnt out. They're fatigued. They don't want to know about meaning. They definitely don't want to know about. And the resilience of Israelis generally is a great attitude. Well, the one is get on with it and do what we need to do today. Go out, do your shopping, do what you need to do. But right now, even the physiological side is coming to tiring in terms of the bodies are now broken because the brain is broken. And because the brain is broken, the psychological aspects of that in terms of the immune system is also broken down. So they are susceptible to disease. They're susceptible to colds, to flus, to all of these things because of what has happened. So it's amazing how that actually grows. And as I said, it's the battlefield is the mind and the weapon is fear. The goal is to divide communities from within. Actors, the terrorist proxy networks, and allied militant groups have mastered this asymmetry. A barrage of rockets alone won't topple a state, but the ongoing threat, the uncertainty, the consistent alerts, these slowly dismantle a community's sense of safety. So those of you who don't know what it is to go when you hear a siren, just the siren itself is enough to actually freak one out. And I'm being very simple here. Just that sound of the siren, the anxiousness, the fear, the anticipatory anxiety of going to the shelter. Will I get there on time? Won't I get there on time? What's going to happen? And the chaos. Have I got everything that I need to take with me to the shelter? Do I need to run? Do I need to run fast? Do I need to take my family? Do I need to take my dog? Do I need to take my husband? Do I need to do whatever? All of these things is a stress overload of the mind. And I don't think that we actually understand that until we've lived it and lived through it. I actually was in Jerusalem at the time that there was a siren. And it was amazing to see the actual behavior of how people have dealt with it or do deal with it. So my granddaughter loves to go to the shelter, of course, because you can see all her buddies. But it's the adults who are really, really affected. And how do you explain to a child as to what is happening with the siren? What could happen? What could be the outcome? Are they old enough to understand? Do we want to explain to them? Don't we want to explain to them? So from a parenting point of view, the children are actually, how do we explain to them? And that's exactly what the terrorist wants. He wants to cause chaos. He wants the young to suffer. He wants that to happen. And that's exactly what it is. And that's that fear. Even in children is that fear. And that fear in children is very different to the fear in adults. And technology can certainly do that because some of the teenagers, or most of them, are on TikTok and they see all of these horrible things going on. The nightmares that people have, the nightmares that will never go away, the trauma that goes on there. So all of this is really well planned. And the amplifier is the modern media economy. Journalists often claim the role as truth-telling, but in today's competitive information market, sensationalism sells, but the ongoing threat, the uncertainty, the constant alerts, this is what happens. And the graphic imagery, breaking news, banners, the relentless push notifications flood the nervous system. Fear becomes a consumable product. Negativity spreads faster than balance. And what actually happens in the neurobiology of the prolonged threat? What happens is physiologically, the HPA axis, our central response system, stays switched on. Our cortisol levels remain elevated. Sleep becomes fragmented. The immune system weakens. Emotional instability and stability declines. We can't eat properly. We can't sleep properly. We're out of sync. And they specifically do these alarms and sirens at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, which breaks the beautiful cycle that we would normally sleep in. So it is very difficult to function and to focus. And out of interest, the norm for focusing is 6.2 seconds. And that is scientifically proven in terms of focusing. So literally that 6.2 seconds is flooded with all of these fears. And it's insurmountable in terms of the amount of fears that can happen. So psychoneuroimmunology, or PNI, teaches us that chronic stress changes the body. It alters immune function, increases inflammatory markers, and makes us more vulnerable to physical illness and mental health deterioration. And then comes the tipping point, exhaustion. Not just physical tiredness, but a deep neurobiological depletion of exhaustion. And when predictability is gone and control feels impossible, what happens? Hopelessness sets in. Hopelessness is not just a feeling, it's a neuroadaptive state. The threat circuits dominate, future thinking collapses, and the strategy in what terrorism wants, the erosion of hope, the weakening of critical thinking, and the fracturing of community bonds. And this is what happens with community bonds. They actually break because we're so engrossed in our own family, our own person who's next to us, that those bonds break. We're scared to go and communicate with other people. We're scared to go and for a meal to somebody because God forbid the siren goes off. We have to walk there, and have they got a safe room? Have they got a place to go? And it's so very difficult. Pardon me. And this is what happens in these environments. But it's exactly what terrorism warfare is all about, and has been for a very long time. It's not just something new. It's just become more sophisticated, as I mentioned before, and I will repeat it, in terms of technology. What happened when we had COVID? Did we not see that the media said, how many people died today? I want to know how many people survived today. And I think that's one of the problems that we always will have. And it's called FOMO, the fear of missing out. Drives compulsive news checking all the time and just see exactly what's happening. Our phones are in Israel, are on alert all the time. But we also want to check the news. What's happening? What's the weather? What's going on? Where are our friends? And we don't really care about where our friends are because we want to care about where we are and are we safe. And the fear of the unknown, FUTU, fills in information gaps with worst case scenarios. That uncertainty is fear or part of fear. And the loop that we have, the APA-HPA axis activates, drives the cortisol, fragments sleep, and lowers the heart rate, and a mark of our adaptability under stress. The brain shifts towards short-term reactive decision-making, so we can't make actual decisions. Communities retreat rather than engage, and public spaces thin out, and trust erodes. And how important is trust? Do we trust? Do we know? We don't know. And then to break the grip. So there are coordinated actions. And in the loop, we talk about predictability, coherence, and purpose. The reorganization, restore order in time, place, and procedure, fix security protocols, scheduled services, predictable public messaging, regulation, shifting the body back towards a flexible parasympathetic state. This is where deep breathing techniques come in for me. And I'm very much into the deep breathing techniques. And I'll often talk about the 478 technique. And if you want to know more about it, we can certainly talk about it. But that's what happens. We hyperventilate. And in fear, that's what happens. We stutter. We can't focus. And as I said, we only have 6.2 seconds to focus. So all of these things affect our thinking. And very often when we're running, we don't even realize what we're running from or to, because it doesn't enter our mind. All we know is we have the siren, and we've got this in our minds, in our brain, to run to the safe room, to run to wherever we need to run to. And that all happens at the same time. And the reintegration, gradually in reintroducing normal social rhythms, markets, schools, sports, supported by micro rituals that reinforce belonging. I saw a beautiful case study the other day where one of the communities actually put together an exercise program where both young and old could do exercises together to bring people together and to do the exercises together, to have fun together, including the children. And that was so great. But the exercises were very programmed in terms of what they should be. to increase the body in terms of its brokenness. And then you have people going to my son Tyron as a chiropractor with the broken body. So that's what actually happens. So you need to rebuild all of that. And of course, if you don't sleep and you don't eat, that's also going to deplete you completely. So then reorientation, help individuals and communities reframe meaning and restore agency through structured forms, values-linked action plans. Very important to recalibrating your valuation, recalibrating your values. So important, so very important. Why not write them down? Why not do that while you're in the safe room? Try and think about these things. Try and think outside of the box. Try and think outside of the box of what you can do. With the exhaustion being such a weakness, is a lawful outcome of prolonged stress. Naming it removes the shame and opens the door to recalibration. When environmental predictability, physiological regulation, and synchronized social rhythms move together, fear loses its computing power. And then based on that, I also put together something which I felt and I found, which is very often, how do you speak to people who reject meaning? How do you speak to them? And I came up with the following, and I call it the framework of long informative format. We begin with validation, acknowledging the lived reality. Resistance to meaning making often comes from lived pain, exhaustion, or physiological conviction. The first step is to meet the resistance without judgment. Validation is this context, means recognizing both the suffering and the position that the suffering may feel meaningless. For me. So my example was, I understand why I might feel like searching for meaning in pain, in unrealistic or even insulting, but when you're in the middle of it, there's no tidy explanation that makes it easier. And then we have the shift from meaning to suffering to meaning to despite suffering. And one of the most effective reframes is moving the conversation away from because of suffering towards the spite, in spite of suffering. The shift removes the implication that suffering is justified or necessary, and instead acknowledges acts of will, dignity, or small moments of value that emerge despite the meaning or the suffering. And the example, we don't have to say that suffering itself is meaningful. Sometimes meaning comes from what survives around it, the people, the choices, the moments that keep you going. Invite exploration, not conviction. Instead of asking someone to find meaning, which might seem like a demand, suggest the idea of exploring it, and meaning exists in the corner of the experience. This reduces pressure, presents meaning making as optional and driven by curiosity. Example, we could look together at whether there's anything, no matter how small, that has value to you in this. If not, that's fine too. And an anchor in tangible micro values, where physiological meaning feels out of reach, small scale values such as kindness, resilience, self-control, or moments of beauty can serve as entry points. These are easier to reach and don't require acceptance of a grand existential purpose. For example, even when the bigger picture makes no sense, sometimes these values, in noticing what we hold on to, a relationship, a moment of relief, a choice that reflects who we want to be. Address the nonsense perception directly. If someone labels meaning making as nonsense, honestly acknowledge the feeling and reflect on possible reasons, such as frustration with cliches, past exposure to empty advice, or cultural skepticism. This honesty reduces tension and creates space for consideration. For example, I hear you calling it nonsense and get why people can use this idea badly, almost like a slogan instead of something real. That's not what I mean by it. And then leave the door open without pressurizing. The conversation should end with an open invitation, not a conclusion. By keeping the possibility alive without forcing it, you allow the concept to surface naturally if and when the individual is ready. For example, if meaning ever shows up in a way that makes sense to you, it will be yours to claim, not because anyone told you to, but because you see it yourself. And that's what I think is so very important, is to understand when these people are exhausted, when they don't know what to do, when it's meaningless, is to try and understand and put yourself in their shoes. For me. And I think that's so very important, is to try and understand the people and put yourself in their shoes. And it's all about listening, and I call it emotional healing. The emotional healing part is so very important in terms of understanding their emotions, acknowledging them, embracing them, and listening to them. But sometimes they don't want to talk. So what do? You just be you, and they just be them. So that concludes my very short address tonight about the framework of meaning, the framework of understanding the psychological warfare, knowing that fear is their objective, and to be strong and to be resilient. But sometimes you can't. Just do it. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
What about discussions, not just comments?
There's something I could say. We always talk about how in adversity that actually pushes you to find a meaning behind it. So I think one of the meanings, in my experience, is that when knowing that that's what terrorists are trying to accomplish, so there's a concerted effort to prove them wrong, and to say, no, we are going to live our lives despite what you're trying to do. We're not going to be afraid, and so that brings out all kinds of strengths as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love what you're saying, Batya, and actually it's a theme that I want to take up for our discussion next week, please, if everyone can attend, because even though, and we have to face it, and thank you, Sean, you showed us the devastating effects that that an exposure to this kind of infiltration of fear that terrorism uses as a weapon to actually get us down. And how we can't deny it. There are very many in Israel that suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. We also had tragic suicides. But I think that very, very scenario is what Batya is saying, that it provokes those of us who look upon it, and very many that are very involved in it. We have testimonies of soldiers, of their resilience, of their fortitude, of their determination, of their courage, and like one of the sons of a famous rabbi, Dr. Perez, said to him, if I am caught as a hostage, don't plead for my release. Let the war take its aim and destroy the terrorists. So we've got this provocation, like Batya said, and it's very powerful. In the face of those who are suffering so, it evokes our compassion, but it also evokes the defiant power of the human spirit. Um, our stand to say, you will not do this to us. We will not allow it. We will have a contrary view to what you're advocating, and but I don't want to talk too much because that would be a theme I want to explore next week. But this is very, very valid, that the provocation of fear is also a challenge to face it and to see its fake influence, what it's trying to do, and that it's like one of our Holocaust survivors said that they wanted to break the human spirit. And it's just that breaking that can bring out the defiance and to say no, and to take a very resilient, very firm and very exemplary stand against the horror and the evil and the falsehood of terrorism. But anyway, I just wanted to affirm what Batya was saying. Any other ideas here?
I'd like to add one more thing, if that's okay. I don't want to take the time away from other people, but in addition to the resilience, it also awakens our convictions of what do we believe in? Why are we here? You know, I had a teacher years ago who said, okay, I'll be the last one to turn out the lights. Okay. And it's like, okay, if there'll come a time when everybody thinks, oh, I guess we all have to leave the country and close up shop and forget everything that we've built up, says no, like this forces us to ask ourselves, what is this all about? You know, what
Yeah.
why are we here?
Yeah.
What are we standing up for? You know, I think in any conflict, in anywhere in the world, there are lots of places in the world where people have to stand firm for civilization and against barbarism. And so, you know, so it forces you to ask yourself, why do I believe in civilization? What does civilization mean to me?
Yeah.
So it forces you to clarify that.
Yeah. Very, very, very true. I mean, this is what Frankel said, you know, the question that that is always to be asked, what are you going to do about this? Who are you in the face of this? This is the resources that we look into in logotherapy and that are powerfully evoked. It doesn't matter as Batya said, where in the world it happens. It's suffering confronts us all in the same way. To question ourselves and to see what we believe and what we stand for and who we're going to be and what we're going to do in the face of what has happened to us or what is threatening to happen to us. Yeah.
I must add that certainly related to technology today in social media, and I must bring home that point. It's great to philosophize. I agree with you, but we need to do more in terms of the media and saying, what can we do? What can we put out there? What positivity in brackets can we put out there? How can we help people to do what we're talking about tonight? And I think it's never been a better time for logotherapy than now, is to reach those people. It's great to have these conferences and webinars and whatever, but we need to find ways to reach out. And
Exactly.
and I think that is really in community. That's how we can be effective. Is to try and create community logotherapy groups where those logotherapy groups can be effective in the community, following all the various aspects. So that's what I'm promoting, is to try and, or advocating, is their technology use of reach.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
May I add something, Gloria? Am I being heard?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to relate to what Batya said, and you continued that, Gloria, that this is a time that we have to stand for what we do stand for. And I remember right after the 7th of October, we were so shattered that a lot of times the question was asked whether we still have the same values, whether we still hold on to the same values that we had always in our lives, or that everything changed and everything was shattered and we are confused now as to man is good from nature or man is bad from his nature, etc., etc. And I was in a minority back then that said nothing in my values has changed. Nothing in my values has changed. It's just showing us what inhuman means and what barbarism means. but I still do believe that man is good from his nature. And to continue what Sean has just said now, that this is the time for logotherapy to show its voice in the world, I want to tell you that in Israel, man's search for meaning, right from the Corona time, has multiplied its cells for I don't know for how many, but it was at the top of the sales market, and I believe that now it will this year even more. It will multiply itself even more in Israel, at least with the Hebrew translation.
Absolutely. But
We
I
need to do a
take,
conference.
yeah,
What?
We need to do a conference.
yes,
The
absolutely.
yeah,
Oh, right.
conference.
But you know, as a conference, like Sean was saying, to provoke us into action. And you know, Sean, a lot of action is taking place. Good heavens. The burst of many organizations of assistance and of help and people coming from overseas to join as volunteers. But as you say, and this is an important point, we mustn't miss it, what Sean has raised. We are living in an age of information explosion. Never was information so instantly available as now. And it's through technology. And we know that the incitement and the lies that are being spread in order to provoke the kind of terrorist actions that we saw, or even to justify them, and to take a stance of animosity towards Israel, a distortion of the facts that all of a sudden we the aggressors and they are the poor victims, that it has to be addressed through that very same technology as well. And we're facing a real problem because often um, uh, uh, social media platforms censor. And we are actually, Sean, like you said, in a battleground for the mind. And every effort is made to deceive us and to overwhelm us with negative information and with downright propaganda. It's a propaganda war that we're facing. It
Right.
is a psychological warfare, more than just a physical one on the ground. But so anyone have any ideas there? Any thoughts about what Sean raised in terms of how we can counteract the information coming through social networks?
Can I ask, like, where does everybody get their information from about Israel?
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Where do you get
Yes.
your information from?
Well, for me, I can tell you that almost, I suppose, every 2 hours, I get information from 3 channels. So I'm up to date pretty much on that because I am and I want to be. But this is also a problem because it goes back to the COVID days and saying, but you know, it's this and that, and then this changes, and then there's politics thrown in. And I must say, talking about the subject of politics, this is another angle that also affects us quite dramatically, is in terms of the internal politicians and the external politicians who throw their weight in and throw people around like pawns. And I think that's another area that we need to be very mindful of what politicians are or aren't saying. And I hope there are no politicians here because I hate politicians. I'm sorry to say that. But they influence us a lot, as much as what the media does in terms of propaganda. The politicians also do that, and they create the hype and the whatever the case is. So we need to be very aware of political propaganda in terms of where we go. And that is one thing that we need to also counteract in terms of looking at our communities to say, let's take away some of the politics. And we have some terrible politics going on, all in every country in the world. And if I think about those who suffer, let's talk about the Lebanese people. Let's talk about the Iranian people. Let's talk about the people on the ground who don't and won't and are not allowed to have this exposure. So we have to be very, very aware of political propaganda. And that's also a silent killer.
Mm. Yeah. Lily, why don't you speak? You sent chats, said that groundwork is a good source of information. I think that it really is a provocation for critical thinking, okay, for discerning the truth from the lie. And you cannot discern the truth from the lie if you don't familiarize yourself with what is true and in order to counteract the lie. So it's very, very important to, like you said in your article, Sean, to close our ears to the barrage of negative news and the reporting of events in such traumatic ways. It's also, this is part of the warfare to overload us with false information so that we can't find our way to see the truth. And it really is also a time for very clear stand in terms of calm, in terms of saying no to a lot of things that you feel, wait, this is going off course, and I don't want to put my mind there. But there are these bright, wonderful information sources and people that speak up and leaders that take a stand that are truly inspiring. And these are the ones we have to seek out and not believe everything that comes our way. Yeah.
Teria, Batya's question about where we get our news from was a very, very important one. I recently watched a program, and I won't go into all the detail now, but 75% of what we read or see or hear is false information. So I think the other question that came up was, how can we help? And maybe one of the ways we can help is start spreading the legitimate channels that we can access as widely as possible, so that at least we know where to go to look, to hear, and to understand to some degree what really is happening. I get lost, I must say, you know, the little channels I watch, I can't even look at them anymore. So yeah, Sean, if you could start sharing some of those channels, maybe Teria, share some of those channels. Let's spread those. Let's put them on every platform we can. And that's one of the ways, I think, of combating.
Yes, absolutely.
I used to write a daily blog, which I used to put out, and maybe I should continue with that. And
Sure, that would be marvelous.
I cut out all the nonsense.
Yeah.
Because it is a consolidation of everything. And my friends ask me, can we cut out the nonsense? And I can. And it puts the facts together. So maybe I should do that on a weekly basis.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if you suggest a strategy, you're the one to do it.
Yeah. I think it's a marvelous idea.
Right, I'll continue with that and I'll share it, but I just
Yeah.
need to know where I'm going to share it. So
Yeah.
if anybody can tell me where to share it, I will certainly do that. And
Mhm.
if you can tell me, Batya, I don't mind sharing on any of your platforms. Perhaps I can email it to you and you can then share it on your platforms. Just let me know. You can send me a private message on my WhatsApp or whatever
Yeah.
you want to do.
That is
But
about the true information. But you know, I'm getting a lot of emails from friends, really good friends, spiritual friends from abroad, who tell me also that in Israel we have censorship about the truth. So, and they're claiming that why are we now destroying Gaza, etc. And we are the perpetrators, which is, I can't hear it. And this is all, it's all kind of turned upside down. So how important it is to send the true information.
One of the things I did, Dita, was that, for example, I found out and I researched what Iran claims they lost 40 kilograms of uranium. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Do you understand what 40 kilograms of uranium is and how big it is?
Yeah.
Well, it's the size of a motorcycle. That's how big it is. It's that tiny. It's that tiny. So, those kind of things I've researched and put out in that, because I think sometimes we need to also understand what they're talking about. We lost 40 kilograms of uranium. So we think it's like this huge truck or this huge house or whatever. Meanwhile, it's the size of a motorcycle. So that tiny size of a motorcycle can disappear anywhere. And that's the kind of stuff which I feel people do need to know about.
Yeah, sure.
Dawn, one of the other things that came up on this program was the difficulty with regards news by virtue of the fact that each and every one of us holds a smartphone. And as long as we have a smartphone in our hands, we are news reporters as well as receivers. And it's very difficult to combat that. Billions of people are walking around saying things, and it's usually the negative things that get said the loudest. So it's a huge challenge.
But then there's the other part as well, is we also have cognitive bias. So our brains also have a cognitive bias in terms of that. So it's a combination of the values and the cognitive bias of our brain in wanting to know certain aspects related to the cell phone and AI picking it up. Absolutely. So whatever you Google, whatever you then do is always found out. It's always available, and it will always be available. You cannot change that. But I think that in terms of WhatsApp now, I would ask everybody to go to the advanced settings on WhatsApp and to put that in, because that's certainly WhatsApp can be hacked in. So on your WhatsApp, if you want to go to advanced settings, that will help you to have more security, more privacy.
Now in terms of practicalities in the framework of logotherapy, here's an idea that you have provoked, Sean, that all right, we can have we can do it through PAN of relevant and highly informative speeches, articles, websites that, or just a video that actually spells out the truth of the situation. And because when we clear our minds as to see what is really happening, we can learn a tremendous deal in terms of logotherapy in practice, also in national practice and international practice. With the right information, we can look at the situation in Israel in terms of what is actually happening, what is actually the issues, and then we'll see. My word, like Batya remarked, what is happening in terms of the challenge that is given to the Israeli nation, so under the scrutiny and the condemnation of almost an entire world? What is at stake? Just finding the truth in terms of what the challenge really is and what the issue really is, we will find tremendous insights in terms of any kind of situation that we experience that is confusing, where we feel bombarded or overwhelmed, or where we feel overcome by negative emotions and fears, and then we can apply it right there where we are in our particular situations, and we can also start reading what's happening in our particular countries. And, we are not just little individuals in a home setting, and the world out there has got nothing to do with us. We are living in a national setup, and that national setup is part of an international setup. And we have to start thinking a little bit more, like you said, out of the box. Not just in terms of a logotherapy philosophy and all its interesting points, but what are we at this time of human history challenged to see and challenged to think about, and what and then the ideas will come as to what we individually can do to play a meaningful part in this big picture.
Meaningful whole, in the meaningful
Okay.
whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I will ask, and we can put that together, and people can look at it, and especially I think that just before next week, I will post and Batya, you can assist me, Dida, with the real information from the inside as to what's happening against this bombardment of false information
Wrong.
and the psychological warfare that's being waged against us, and that are duping people, even leaders all over the world.
Right.
Well, what are we to do about it? Just crawl into a little hole and deny it? We've got to look at it. Because logotherapy needs to be also practiced on a national and international level, not just on an individual clinical level. Okay, so all right. Anybody
Yeah.
wants to add to that?
Yeah.
May I add something to that, please?
Yeah.
Batya said before, when you started talking about the role of logotherapy in this situation, and also Sean, Batya said, relating to me, that's why we need your conference. But this is not a conference of call for action. This is a conference about, the conference is of the Israeli Association of Israel. And I just want to take this minute to let you know, all of you, that it is already 99% or almost 100% that we will have English translation for the whole conference. Because first of all, I have reached Alex Vesely, the grandson of Viktor Frankl, and I will interview him in English, and therefore I have arranged English translation for all the Hebrew lecturers there. And I intend to invite you all to register also, and I will be in connection to Penn. Teria will be there in any case also. And why am I saying that? Because it's not a call for action. It's a celebration of the 120th anniversary of Viktor Frankl, which is very important, and in honor of Viktor Frankl. But the last speaker there is Israeli, who have lost 4 people of his family on the 7th of October. And the way he chose to take this incredible suffering is to help people choose for the good, choose for peace, etc. And he has established a whole movement of peace, global peace in the world. And he's so active, both in Israel as well as in the whole world, that I think this will give all of you and other people of the logotherapy community in all countries an extremely acute and clear view about what is really going on in Israel. First of all, you will understand the acute suffering of the murder of 4 people of your close family, and then what he chose to do with that. And he's not a logotherapist, he's just a very spiritual mentor. And so I think it will be a fantastic opportunity for all of you. And therefore, I have arranged that there will be an English translation for all that. And I take this opportunity to let you know And when I'm absolutely sure that it's 100%, and I'm almost sure that it is 100% sure about this translation, I will be in contact with Pen that she can send all of you the details for registrating. And this will be fantastic. And Teria will open it. I mean, she will be the blessing one out of the international community. And she will also tell a bit about her relationship to Franco. And then there is also this interview with the grandson and an interview with Professor David Gutman, who has been the friend, the very close friend of Viktor Frankl, etc. But you will get a real Israeli viewpoint. The other Israeli lecturer is also one who has lost his brother in the Yom Kippur War, and he chose to do only good in the world. And he doesn't stop with doing good in the world. It's the victory of the human spirit. You will
Oh,
see.
wonderful, Dida. I really encourage every one of us to attend the conference.
Yeah,
It's over Zoom, so
it's over Zoom, and
we
let
look
me.
forward to your invitations to all
Yes,
of
I
us.
already want to let you know just now to save the date of the 10th of September at 7 o'clock Israeli time. I could already send you the little save the date, but it says you will understand the date and the Zoom, and the 7 o'clock you will understand. The rest is in Hebrew. But very soon we will send the invitation in English as well.
Mm.
And I will send it to Pan, and then she will send it to all of you. I will also send it to other people, to Sabine Indiger of the Vienna Facebook, etc., etc., so that as many people of our logotherapy, international logotherapy community can be influenced by that. That is very, very important.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And let me just assure you, a remark was made. It's so confusing to look at the different sides. We're not going to, and our conversations and Dida's conference is nothing to do with politics.
No,
We
absolutely.
are not politicians, we're logotherapists, but we will also look at politics in terms of what is happening. But it's not a political discussion, it's a logotherapeutic one. Okay? So yeah, any other remarks over here?
Yes, I'd like to reply also to Elri relating to looking at both sides. And I think this comes into that, and I'm going to be very crude here and say to you, Elri, that you've been sucked in because you must stand up and say, I don't choose a side, but this is what I think it is and what I think it isn't. And I think that's one of the problems, and one of the what fear does is it creates this uncertainty of which side should I take? Do I need to pick a side? Do I have to have a side? And
Mm,
I understand, Ari. I really understand, and I really, what's the word? I sympathize with you in terms of the overwhelmness of what the media does to us, and that's
mm,
exactly what they've done to you. And I say that very crudely, but honestly with you. So really use my terminology: fear, false evidence appearing real. Is it real? Is it really real? And if it
mm,
is, you don't have to pick a side. There's no such thing as picking sides. It's what you feel and your values. And I would suggest again to take your values and to look at your values again and just say to yourself, these are my values, this is what I stand for. Because we've become into an immoral world, in my opinion, and we're fighting morality. That's what we're doing at the moment. And we're becoming confused. And
yeah.
confusion is fear. And confusion is fear is uncertainty.
And
I
the confusion
hope you
is
understand.
particularly, yeah, yeah, thank you, Elri. And the confusion is particularly because the terrorism uses a moral face. They use moral language. It really is a battle for what is really the true values, and which is and the hijacking of those values in order to destroy those values.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what it is, you know.
Yeah.
Terrorism hijack our values in order to destroy our values without being detected. But boy, the wonderful thing about, and just this remark, which is so true about life, and as one of the principles of logotherapy, truth prevails. Sooner or later, a lie is shown up for what it is.
Yeah.
Wrong actions lead to disastrous outcomes. Right actions lead to a victory, and that's for sure. So even though we have to go through the valley of dark deception, there comes a time when we sit at the table with our cups overflowing in the presence of the enemy. And now that's logotherapy, boy. And we'll be going on with this wonderful discussion. It's very relevant and
Yeah.
very important.
And
Right.
don't forget that morality and actually ethics was the main axis of the whole of Viktor Frankl's philosophy of life.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, my
Right.
students are asking me a lot, you know, is there such a thing as universal values or not? Is it true that everybody around the world holds the same values? You know, because when I try to explain to them that Frankl said that there are values that belong to a certain realm, they're intrinsic to the world, you know, and they radiate down to us, you know. So they have trouble with that because they say, you know, it doesn't seem as if there's such a thing as universal values anymore. You know,
Oh gosh,
yes,
Batya,
also
that's
something
a
to think
theme
about.
that I will be taking up next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is exactly what do we understand by universal values? You know, and we look at what Frankl said, if mankind is not to destroy itself, it will have to find a common will to common meaning. In other words, we have to discern the truth that applies to everyone, everywhere, irrespective. There are universal yardsticks of right and wrong, and we intuitively do have that. And it's very interesting to look at what the terrorists have done with their own conscience. Okay, that is another thing.
Yeah.
Like Frankl said, Hitler could not have done what he did if he did not trample his conscience underfoot.
Yeah.
Right? No man can escape an awareness of values that transcend him and that objectively confront him, because he's got conscience, and it's a gift of transcendence, like Frankl said. We do know intuitively what is right and what is wrong, and it's not very difficult to discern the difference if we look at it as we set it on the table. What are the consequences of wrong action? What are the consequences of right action? And then it becomes, and what is then right action and what is wrong action? We will pursue the subject next week. Okay, I'd
Fantastic.
love to do
Okay.
that.
Great. Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Sean,
Sean.
and everybody.
Yes, thank you, Sean. It was very, Sean didn't give you, he just gave you a little snippet of the tremendous work that he has done and the article that he did write. And Sean, if anybody wants to see the full article, and I would actually encourage you to get it, because it's very difficult to transmit a subject that is so complex and profound in just a few paragraphs. So Sean's article can be sent to anybody who wants it. You can just
great
email
success.
him, and yeah, okay.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you, Sean.
Thank you very much.